but I'm not showing it on my screen, so let me get that working. All right, so on here, we're going to go through, and it was a short game, only 16 moves. And it looks like Murph is white in this game, playing the London system. And no worries. But we get to things like here, and we talked about, I remember this game, Murph, we looked at this a little bit, right?
Right.
So let's start with this one right here. And I'm going to move this over to a board editor. And you guys can see it fine. Now my stream, they don't see it so easily, so I'm gonna move it over a little bit for the stream. All right, there you go. Now the stream can see it better. But what I like to do is remove all of the pieces, except for the kings, right? Because we can't lose our kings. So if we keep our kings on the board, we can start talking about the pawn structure as it stands. Now, right now, no pawn. Sorry?
You took the black king.
Oh, I sure did. That's he did not castle yet. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. I forgot. All right, so no pawns have been taken at this point. This is called a pawn chain, and this is called a pawn chain. Now, this is usually you would fianchetto a bishop behind that. And this is normally a prophylactic move, meaning a move that restricts your opponent's options to keep him from putting a bishop or a knight here. That's usually the purpose of this move, especially since we know that we've castled. But this is open space. Now, there are, in this situation, two weak pawns and thereby also two weak squares on the whole board. Just two. Can someone name them? Hey, Sai. Thank you very much. Guys, we are in a real life class. And this is where, hey, thinker teacher, this is where we are teaching some basic concepts to our students in real life. You get to audit the class. So basically, you get to sit in. You can, hey, Dimple, you can definitely give us comments, thoughts, ideas, because they can't see what you put in chat. So you can guess along with them. It's okay. Everything I'm doing with them you can do, but my attention will be mostly on them. So this is the pawn structure that we saw, guys, since you just joined us, from this game. All right, so this is a pawn structure from this game that was played by one of our students. And what we're asking them to do is to look at this, but we're looking at it with just the pawn structure. So we removed all of the pieces except for the kings. And we said, okay, now take a look at this and tell us what's going on as far as right now we're trying to identify two weak pawns and two weak squares, because we're going to learn about pawn structures today. So, do we have any guesses?
Well, the weak one,
Uh-huh.
I think on the sixth rank, both of those pawns are weak.
So on the sixth rank, and
No,
you're
the seventh rank.
okay. So the seventh rank, there's three
No,
pawns.
I'm sorry. The two, the five.
On the fifth rank, okay. So you mean these two pawns?
Yeah.
All right. I'll circle those in green. Murph, do you see any weak pawns or weak squares?
Can I ask you what the definition of weak is?
Oh, sure you can. That was part of the test to see if you knew. So if you were to guess, then we will discuss which ones are and why they are weak. But it's up to you. Do you want to take a guess first? Because when I explain it, if I explain what the definition is, you're going to know.
Okay. I'm going to go one black and one white. I'm going to go with G5 for black.
G5 for black. So you also agree that this one is a weak square. Okay.
And I'm going to go with G2.
And
For white.
G2 for white. All right. So the definition of a weak pawn is a pawn that cannot be defended by another pawn. Okay, so now find me two weak pawns. Pawns that where they stand cannot be defended by another pawn.
assuming that doesn't include the original line of scrimmage.
Sure it does.
Oh.
Show me pawns that cannot be defended by another pawn. Impossible to be defended by another pawn. Hey, while you guys think of that, let me just welcome our raiders. Hey, thank you, Daywin. Nice to see you. Hey, thank you for the subscription, Linear. So I will tell you guys, and thank you for the follow. So what we're doing right now is a in real life class. And what we're looking for is, in this case, what you see on the screen, we are looking for weak pawns. Okay, that's all we're looking for right now. Can we find weak pawns? And
only two?
There are 2 weak pawns. Yep.
Only 2?
Only 2 weak pawns.
Then I'm not understanding what that means. Okay.
No worries. We can help you with that in a second. Hey, Grandmaster Blunder. Thanks for the follow. Thank you for the follow of the Only True Falcon and Jeff Baldwin. Thank you, guys. All right.
I will tell you what I think is weak based on what I think I understand.
Okay, because one of them you said was possibly here and here.
Change that.
Okay, go ahead. Because remember, it's got to be pawns that cannot be protected by another pawn.
Okay, so the 3 black pawns on the 7th rank, the 1 black pawn on H6.
H6. What was the other one?
The 3 on the 7th rank.
All of these guys?
Yeah.
All right, so this one is correct. This one cannot be protected by another pawn because there's no pawns equal, well, there's no pawns behind it, right? So I cannot protect this pawn. This pawn can be protected by this pawn. All I have to do is push it 1. This pawn can be protected by this pawn if I push it 1.
I took it literally from where it's at.
Right.
Now I understand you.
Now this pawn, in theory, can go all the way here, but I'm counting it as weak. But more importantly, the better term for this pawn and this pawn is going to be the term backward. Okay? So it's backward as in all the other pawns next to them, and it could be on either side, right? Could be on either side, but this pawn, you only have 1 pawn next to you. If the pawns on either side of you are forward of you or ahead of you, then you're a backward pawn. So this one only has 1, this one only has 1, and both of those pawns are advanced past it, so those pawns are backward. No, he did not get the FM title, Kim. Thanks for asking. Hey, Brandon, if you're there even. All right, so these guys are fine, right, because they can all protect each other still. None of them have moved yet.
Okay.
Now, if I move this one would become backward, right? So if this pawn is up here, this is backward. And the problem with the backward pawn is it's the last one usually in a chain. This could be backward, but right now it's not because I still got a pawn next to it. And this is a pawn duo, okay? Whenever I have pawns side by side, and they all start that way. But this is a pawn duo out here in the middle of the board. But this is a backward pawn, and the problem with the backward pawn is usually that it creates a weak square.
Why is an A2 a backward one?
Oh, it could be 2. Yes, A2.
Okay.
When I pushed this pawn, this one also became a backward pawn.
Okay.
All right, so guys, we are doing an in real life lesson. My students are on Zoom, and that's who you hear speaking. But we don't show their faces because they could come and go, and I don't have to worry about resizing and putting them on camera. It's bad enough you have to look at me, right? Oh, who's our first chatter? I didn't even give credit to our first chatter, which was Thinker Teacher today. Thinker Teacher, you've never been my first chatter. I feel confident that that is a true statement. But Thinker Teacher, you are my first chatter today. Thank you very much. All right, so back to the lesson. We're working on pawns, understanding pawn structures, understanding why pawns are the soul of chess, why pawns are critical to chess. Okay, so there you go. There you go. These 2 pawns are now backwards, which makes these 2 squares in front of the backward pawn weak. So these squares are weak. Why? Simple reason. No pawn can ever attack that square. No pawn can ever attack that square. White cannot protect this square. Black cannot protect this square. So those are the weak squares in my opponent's camp. So this is not a weak square in the middle because this pawn can move forward and attack that square. But if this pawn were all the way up here, this becomes a weak square. And weak squares beg to be occupied by pieces. So this is a weak square, this is a weak square. We don't want to necessarily occupy them with pawns. We want to occupy them with pieces. Why? Look at this knight. The only thing that can attack that knight is a bishop or a queen. You can't get your rook to attack it because there's stuff all in the way. You'd have to come over here to this side with a black rook. So this knight is protected. And so let's say black has a white bishop, a white bishop, but not a dark squared bishop. That bishop, there's no bishop to kick that knight out. That knight would stay there forever. Yeah, the under 2200 has been. Right? So it can't get kicked out. Now, this knight is on a light square. So in theory, that bishop can get over here to attack it. But this knight you can't get rid of. All right? And it doesn't have to be a knight. It could be a bishop there. And it doesn't have to be a bishop. It could be a rook there. And even with a rook here, it's attacking the pawn. It's attacking this pawn. And you can't kick him out unless you have this white bishop. You can't kick them out easily, right? Now, maybe a knight can. Knights are great for kicking things out of squares. But if you just imagine it's where it's a rook against a rook, now you're in trouble, right? Because you can't get rid of my rook. Let's just say he's not even there. And let's say you have two rooks, and I have two rooks. I get to pile up two here, one here. I'm also going to be able to attack this way. And the nicety is that you can't get rid of me. You can't, you'd have to get a rook here, and then try to trade. So weak squares become great outposts for your pieces. That's where we want to pile those pieces in and be safe with our pieces. Oh, there's been so many guys. Thank you for the follows. I can't keep up because I'm doing an in real life class. And it's for an hour and a half, and then we'll hang out together after that. All right, so this is the concept of weak squares.
Marty.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, put a pawn back on C2 for a second.
White or black?
White. Now the pawn that you moved to B4, move that to B3. It was a weak square before. Is it a weak square now?
This is a weak square, is it not? These are both still weak squares. I can never attack that square with a pawn for black. I can never attack this square with a pawn for white.
Okay.
So they are weak squares.
Okay, so it didn't matter whether you went 1 or 2.
No.
With the B.
No. I just demoed it. It could be all the way up here.
So is B2 a weak square?
No, B2 is not necessarily a weak square because
I see. Because
it's on the 7th rank. It's a bad square. You don't want me to have pieces in here anyway. But as long as I have the pawns blocking you out, it's not the same. This one is because the pawn is blocked. I can't get to you. Here, I can get to you.
got it.
Right? There's nothing stopping me from attacking you. Here, my own pawn is stopping me from attacking you. And so if you go back here and imagine this way, you only pieces you can get rid of me with is a bishop or a queen. And if that dark square bishop is gone, now you're not going to get rid of me, right? Because you wouldn't trade your queen for a knight. And so I get to sit there forever if you don't have a dark squared bishop to get rid of me. All right, so that's just, but the concept of weak squares, here's another weak square, here's another weak square. This is not a weak square. Why? Because I could attack it with a pawn. So if you had a knight here, and I had my pawn here, this is not a weak square because I can chase you away. And now you have to leave, and that weak square these are not weak squares. They're all attacked by pawns. And we don't consider the squares behind the pawns as weak. All right, so it's a square in front of a pawn that can't be protected or attacked by a pawn. So if we go back to Murph's game, and we see what's going on here, we see that there is a weak square here that, boy, it would be really nice to put the bishop there. And when we analyzed this game, I was telling Murph he could have went here. Why? Because look, I'm attacking these back end squares. His opponent can say, well, I can trade off, but now I still get this move. And I try to remember, yeah, I think this was where I wanted you to go, Murph. I think that, oh, I know why. We didn't take back with the pawn, I'm sorry. You would take back with the bishop, because now you're attacking the rook, right? You can put the knight in front, or you can move the rook. You guys would decide. What do you want? You got those two choices, or you're going to be losing a rook for a bishop. And we know that the bishop is worth 3 and the rook is worth 5. But so now we gain a...
If he blocks with the knight, you just take the knight?
You could, or you could still just throw in the check.
Okay.
I would throw in the check. Why am I going to give up my... So, great concept question. It's not the purpose of this lesson, but let's go over it. So you said, why not? Would I take the knight? No, I would not take the knight. Why? I take the knight, the queen takes back, and I helped. What did I just do? I took a piece that was developed, my bishop, traded it for another developed piece. So now we just both got rid of a developed piece. But the result of us getting rid of this developed piece with our developed piece is that we help you develop your queen.
Okay.
Why would I want to help you, my opponent, develop anything? Right? We know that, remember, the goals in the opening are to develop, develop, develop. First 3 goals, most important 3 goals, develop, 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 and king safety and control the center squares. But yes, I would not take this knight. I would throw him in check. And if my opponent says, well, I'll just take you off, I would not take the rook first, because I have this nice intermezzo move, in-between move, where I get to say check again, and now he has to go here. He has no other legal move. So I still get the rook. He can't move the bishop because I would just take it off. And I'm threatening to come in and just cause more havoc. So no, I would not take the knight, which would allow him to develop the queen. And if I throw in a check and he says like this, I have no dark squared bishop, right? Or he could just slide over here. He would love to castle, but he's not going to, because he's not going to put his queen in between. But still, the point is, from this point forward, what did I get? The other way, I get a rook. I still get him not to castle. And my queen is maybe out. But if you remember, the other scenario was my bishop was here. So I had more pieces developed. Right? So if I go here first, and he moves, I have both of these pieces out in the center of the board doing some aggravation damage to my opponent. I can now develop my next piece maybe. I can, I don't know what else I might want to do at the moment, but I can always take this knight. There's no rush, because until he moves the rook, he's not going to move the knight. And if he moves the rook, I can always still just take the knight at that point. So no, I wouldn't take the knight. Don't relieve the pressure. All right, so these are weak squares, though. As you notice, the bishop gets to sit there and the rook can't stop him. This square has been controlled by the bishop, so this square, although weak, black has covered it. This square, black cannot cover because he overextended his pawns. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. So let's check another game by our man Murph. Let's go back, look at Murph's games, and see if we can look at one other game. I just want to see if you have another game that's worth looking at pawn structures. That one you're playing right now. We don't want to do one that you're playing. That's never nice. All right, let's check out this game. And all I'm going to do, I'm just looking for pawn structures, guys. And I'm going to wait till we probably trade a few pawns or not. There we go. We got some pawn trades going on. All right, so right now, I'm going to do it even this early. I'm going to take this and go put this in the board editor. And we're going to look at this in the board editor. I know it's early still, but I want to look at it real quick. All right, so let's remove the pieces and look at what kind of pawn structure we have going on. Okay.
All right. I'm thinking that white has no No weak pawns at this point.
So white has no weak pawns, meaning a pawn that's not able to be protected by another pawn. Correct. What else do you notice?
I believe black has a pass pawn.
Black has a pass pawn? Does he?
In the middle.
Does he? What's the definition of a pass pawn? This is beautiful because this is what I want to cover. One of the things is, what's a pass pawn? So, you said this one is a pass pawn?
Yeah, if he goes forward.
Well, what's the definition of a pass pawn?
I don't know the exact definition. It's a pawn that's passed.
There's no opposite pawns on the other two sides.
So,
That's his defense.
almost. A pass pawn is if there are no pawns ahead of that pawn, next to it, or in front of it. There can be no pawns in any of these squares for this pawn to be passed.
Oh, so he's not a pass pawn.
And the reason why that you see that is if you push him forward, white just takes.
Yeah.
So he's not passed. But let's say this pawn were here. Now this pawn is a pass pawn. There's no pawns next to it or in front of it. But also this pawn is a pass pawn because this doesn't count. It has to be where it could stop my pawn. Right? There's no pawns of blacks that could stop the white pawn. So this would be a pass pawn and this would be a pass pawn. So, no, incorrect. But first let's just check material. Are they equal, or is one of them ahead of pawn, or is it equal number of pawns?
Equal number of pawns.
Very good. Very good. Material-wise, equal number of pawns. Now, you said there are no weak pawns for white. How about for black? Are there any weak pawns for black?
Yeah.
Which one? Or which ones?
See the one on 7.
I got a lot of them on 7.
Yeah, the first one. I'm trying to see. That's G.
This one?
G7? Yeah.
Not a
Yeah,
weak,
G7.
not a weak pawn.
A7.
This one has this one next to it, and vice versa. So those aren't weak pawns. But this one has no pawn to protect them. So this one is a weak pawn. It's also, we have a title for it, an isolated pawn, or an isolani, people call it. But it's an isolated pawn, meaning there are no pawns on either side. Now, being a rook pawn, right? Rook pawns, A and H pawns, A and H pawns. I don't know if the new people that have come to chess, ever since it's only been online, right, the last year, you might not even call these rook pawns. But it's always been called a rook pawn for me, and always been, so. But yeah, A and H pawns. So it's easy to be isolated because all you have to do is have this pawn take that way and it's isolated. Because there's only, right, you only have one buddy next to you. All these pawns have at least 2 pawns next to them to start. But the rook pawns only have 1. So this is a weak pawn, very good. And it's an isolated pawn. Is this an isolated pawn? No, it's not an isolated pawn because this guy is there. Very good. Is this one a weak pawn?
Yes.
In actual, if you were just saying, is that a good target? Yes. It's a good target because right now this one is keeping this pawn from helping out. But that might not always stay the way, right? I mean, I can maybe attack with this pawn. Maybe you don't pay attention. I get to take this pawn, and now that pawn is no longer weak, right? Now that pawn looks good again. But it could be made to be isolated in the fact that this pawn is stuck behind this pawn. And as long as I keep a pawn there, then, hey, I can be okay. But remember, even if I protect, right? Even if I protect and you attack, and I move my king and you take and I take, now this pawn is what? Isolated. Yeah, so this is now a weak, isolated pawn. While this one is an isolated pawn artificially, because if this one goes away, it will no longer be isolated. By the way, this is now a backward pawn. There's no pawns next to it. to help it out. So this is a backward pawn. And this is an isolated pawn. And that's what we're learning is the terms, but also not just the terms. I want you to understand the principles behind the structure. All right, see you later, Master John. All right, so what is this called?
Double pawns.
Doubled pawns. Doubled pawns, the weakness to a doubled pawn is that they can't protect each other. The strength is, look at all these squares they do attack. It's kind of weird, right? I mean, they attack those nice squares. But I can put a piece here. Remember we talked about nice outposts in front of the weak squares. That's a great square for my knight. These pawns aren't going anywhere. And although you're attacking these squares, I just don't have to put anything there. And if I can get my king here eventually, it could gobble up this pawn because double pawns are hard to protect. Now, remember, we have an equal number of pawns. White has 2 pawn islands. 1, 2, 3. That guy's part of this pawn island. 1, 2, 3. So we have 1 pawn island and 1 pawn island. So we have 2 pawn islands. Black also has only 2 pawn islands. But black has an isolated rook pawn and doubled pawns. So right now, white's pawn structure is a better structure than black's. And white can plan, because Murph, we were talking about making plans. We can make plans around our pawn structure and try to attack this pawn and attack this pawn. And we can even wait and trade off some pieces and then go after those pawns. If we get rid of, as a plan, if we get rid of black's black bishop, and queens would be nice to get rid of too, but if we get rid of the black bishops, that pawn is going to be a lot harder for black to attack. So that might be part of our plan, is to trade off our black bishop. I can put rooks here and attack this because my pawns aren't in the way. And because he's so far ahead, black has a hard time protecting him. Think about how black has to find a way to protect him, right? And knights. And he only has a couple of squares. Even knights can help protect him. So let's go back to your game and just take a peek at the game itself and see if that makes sense. All right, so, and let's flip the board because somehow we got the board flipped. Yeah. Murph was black though, so, we were trying to cheer him on. But so Murph has the weaker pawn structure. And notice this bishop keeps that pawn from moving. Your queen is protecting. And the parts that we don't know about are there hanging pieces, right? You're attacking both of these at the same time. So that's looking good for black to be able to get back, and you're not down a piece. So it looks like black is threatening the pawn and the knight at the same time. So where could this knight go? It looks like we're going to lose the pawn. I don't know that you could stop it. But where could this knight go? He's under attack, right? He can't go here. The queen could take him off. Can't go here. Oh, he could. Queen would protect him. So the knight can go here. The knight can't go here, though, because the queen would just take him off. And the knight can go here. So the knight only has 2 squares where he wouldn't be taken off immediately. Agreed?
Yep.
All right. So which one would you do if you were white?
If I was white, I would definitely put him in, what is that? E6?
D6.
D6, I'm sorry.
Yep, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, we need, and that's one of the things actually on Lichess, you can use the board coordinates exercises and get to be able to call out the squares a little easier. So let's see what white does. White does go here. Now, there's no check. Unfortunately, Murph also can't castle because he's moved his king already, right? So now, if black wanted to get rid of this knight, he can't go here and, well, he could go here and do it, but then white could just take it off and say, my knight's going to stay there even for a long time, right? And guess what? He'd have doubled pawns again. See, here's for thinking through things like, do I want to put my knight here to try to trade off that knight? Well, probably not, because if I take like this, my knight gets to stay there longer. I have 2 pieces now attacking this pawn because my bishop left. So I'm going to win this pawn. And in fact, I can win it right away. And when I win it, I'll be also protecting this pawn. And even if we trade off queens, look at white's position, right? If I can get this pawn here, that knight gets to stay there for a while, because the only piece you can attack it with that's of equal or lesser value will be the knight. So you got to maneuver your knight into a white square to attack, and that's going to take a while, right? So that's a slow process, and so you might want to even push it. And if white comes out here and trades that guy off, now it is doubled, so you'd be nice to trade it off. And he's attacked twice right now, by the way. So seeing as how he's attacked twice and only protected once, you have a choice. You could try protecting him, but guess what? That would make white very happy because now this knight gets to stay there. Here's a weak square, right? Here's problems that's for you to deal with as black. But all we're looking at is pawns. So here's a weak pawn. Again, if we move this into the board editor, imagine all these pieces are gone. We have an isolated pawn. We have an isolated pawn. Now we have doubled pawns. While Murph still has only 2 pawn islands, and black has, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. Murph is actually black in this game. But white won another pawn, and black's pawn structure is really bad. But let's see, we can even take a peek at what happened a little bit. So he did go here, and Murph hit at that pawn right away, which if he were to take, he'd be attacking Murph's knight. So Murph would have to take back, but then this knight has to find a home. And does that knight have a home from this square? Can't go here, right? Can't go here. Can't go here. Can't go here. Oh, sorry. Bishop or the knight. Can't go here. We got 2 pieces. And he can't go here or here. So every square that knight can get to is taken. So again, if white were to think, oh, I'll just take. Murph takes back, and Murph's like, yeah, now your knight's going to fall. So you got to try to save your knight. Interesting, right? Let's see what happened, though. So he comes out with the queen because he says, now you can't take, because that's alignment, which we're not talking about today. So let's get back to pawns. Hey, Patrick, thanks for the subscription. All right, so let's get back to our pawns focus. So we are looking for different pawn issues. So I'm going to go through what all these different pawn issues are. I want to do it in real time, showing you some examples out of a game, but now we're just going to go ahead and look at, I'll show you what they mean, and we'll look at some. All right? So these are all, what are these called?
Isolated pawns.
Yes, very good. Now, let's keep going. How many pawn islands does each player have?
0.
0 pawn islands?
Black has 3. White has 2.
Islands.
Pawn islands.
White has 2.
Unless you have no pawns, Janet, unless you have 0 pawns,
Yeah,
you have pawn islands.
I was hearing weak.
Oh, okay, no. Well, there are weak pawns too, but you said white doesn't have any weak pawns. I agree.
Right.
All right. I mean, we could say these are weak. These are weak squares for sure. But most times you don't want to count a weak pawn as being the pawn in its starting point, but it really is, because if I had a rook here, I might still be threatening that weak pawn. And you can move it though to keep it. I'm sorry, you can move it to keep it, and now it's no longer weak, right? All right. But this pawn is weak also, but I can move it. So one of the really nice concepts, besides the fact we're talking about pawns today, is squares. And so more important than a weak pawn, because a weak pawn suggests, you got it, Patrick, a weak pawn suggests that it's something we're going to attack because it's weak. Let's attack the weak pawn, right? That sounds logical. If I got a weak pawn, I'm going to attack it and see if I can win it. Well, I don't want you to think that way too much, because the problem is that weak pawns don't have to stay weak if they get moved. They get traded away. But a weak square these squares are going to be weak for a long time. These squares are weak until you can get that pawn past it. And if I can put something into those weak squares and take advantage of these weak squares, white would be dominating. But pawn islands matter a lot. So we have 3 pawn islands, and therefore white has a better pawn structure. They have the same number of pawns, guys. They have the same number of pawns, 7 versus 7. All right? Yeah, Patrick. So what else is black's problem? Black has 3 pawn islands. He has 4 weak squares, while white has none. What else is wrong with black?
Double pawn.
And they're isolated. So we have double isolated pawns. Again, really hard. At least if there was a pawn here, you can try to make some hay. But with 2 pawns being isolated and double, white in this position could trade down the chess kings, and white should win, depending. But white has all the advantages. White can go eat up these pawns. White could get in here and eat this pawn. White has advantages. So white would say, I could trade off my pieces and I'm in good shape. But fewer pawn islands, the better. When we start the game, Janet, we have 1 big pawn island. The mainland, right? We have 1 big pawn island. But as we trade or lose pawns altogether, trade them off the board, or if we take something with them, we create pawn islands. And with every pawn island comes a semi or open file. So this is a semi-open, this is a semi-open, this is a semi-open. Black has 2 semi-open files because he has doubled pawns. He's moved that pawn off of its normal rank, and this one has been traded. So we have semi-open, semi-open, semi-open. All right. So that's pawn islands. We've talked about isolated pawns. We talked about isolated double pawns. We've talked about backward pawns. All right. We've talked about passed pawns, right? We showed you what a passed pawn is. Keith was asking about it. We have a simple adage. It's 3 P's in a row. Push past pawns. So if you ever get a passed pawn, right? So let's make a passed pawn. So this guy's passed. He wasn't passed here because this pawn is sitting there. So let's say he is, he's not passed yet. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push my candidate. This guy's my candidate passed pawn up here so that he can't push here without, first of all, would you take here if you were black? No. Because if you push him, he becomes passed. If you take, he's no longer a passed pawn. And remember, we're going to have kings. That king can come out here and try to eat him. And regardless, he's doubled now. So no. If you're here and white does this, you want to say, great, thank you for the passed pawn. You want passed pawns. And any time in the game, passed pawns are dangerous. And if you can push a passed pawn, it's going to create so much havoc, so much pressure on your opponent. The simple adage is push passed pawns. What do you do with a passed pawn? You push the passed pawn. Now, you might want to protect it, right? You might want to protect it a lot, right? So you could just keep pushing it. But passed pawns want to be pushed, and you need to find a way to push it. And you might have to prep it so you can push it safely, but you want to find a way to push passed pawns. So the idea here is that we push this pawn first so he can't push. And then let's say he does something like this. Now I'm pushing this pawn. And let's say he does something like this, and guess what I'm doing? I'm creating a passed pawn. If he goes here, passed pawn. If he takes, passed pawn. So that's why this pawn gets pushed first, and not, as I've seen beginners do in this situation, they'll push this pawn and say, okay, good, now it's locked, and now I can push this pawn. But the problem is, you're eventually going to get here, and I'm going to take you. So I want to be switched so that if you take, I take back, and this pawn becomes the new passed pawn, still on this file. But we let him just take his place. All right. Now, on one side of the coin, we're saying passed pawns must be pushed. Guess what we're saying on the other side? Passed pawns must be stopped. Good rule of thumb is don't wait till the pawn gets all the way down here to decide to stop him. We're assuming there's something protecting it. I want to stop him as far up the board as I can. I would love to stop him all the way back here. If I could, I'd rather stop him here. Now he blocks you from attacking whatever piece I put here. And so I can put a rook there, I can put a knight, I can put a rook there, I can put a knight there. So the further back this passed pawn is that I'm blockading, remember, because it's a passed pawn, that's not true. I was going to say because it's passed pawn, there's no pawns that can kick you out. This is because it's going to be a backward pawn or an isolated pawn. In this scenario, it's an isolated pawn, so there's no pawns that could kick me out. But yeah, on a passed pawn, if I can blockade it, all the better. And I want to blockade it as soon as possible because this pawn is much more dangerous here than it is when it's way over here. This is going to take him 6 moves or more. 6 moves or more to get here. While here, he's 1 square away from queening. The closer you get to queening, the more pressure that you put on your opponent and the more that you want to stop. So you don't wait. So if you see somebody has the passed pawn coming here and you're sitting here and you decide to go do some other stuff, nah, shame on you. Stop them as early as possible. Okay? Passed pawns need to be stopped as early as possible, and you push passed pawns. All right, the last concept we're going to talk about is pawn majorities. All right. Let's just make it simple. All right. Same number of pawns still, right? 7, 4, 6. Oops, I need one more. All right. We have 7 pawns. Each side has 7 pawns. But there's a difference. This is a potential passed pawn. Do you notice? There's only one pawn that could stop me. So no, just one pawn. If there's only one pawn in your way, especially if it's not literally in your way. Because if this is like this has not got much potential. He's going to run into this pawn. But here, I can do my thing where I'm going to try to get this pawn to be traded and this pawn take its place, and I'm going to have a passed pawn. But this is called a pawn majority versus a pawn minority. I have more pawns on the queen side. Remember, the queen side is here. I have more pawns on the queen side than my opponent does. I have a pawn majority. Literally, black has a pawn majority on the king side. But what's wrong with that pawn majority?
Double pawn.
Double pawns. So you have double pawns. So that means if you look, there's no file for me to get that potential passed pawn. So this pawn structure, although it is a pawn majority technically, it's a broken or wounded majority, right? It's not healthy. So if this pawn were here, now we have a pawn majority over here, 5-4, and you have a pawn majority of 3-2, but these two pawns are going to collide. The two potentials are going to collide. So in essence, both teams want to get, like, white wants to get rid of this guy without having to trade this guy, and black wants to get rid of this guy and this guy so he can come all the way down too. All right, so there is things called a minority attack. That's a later, much later lesson. Tonight is just to understand that when you have a pawn majority, that usually can try to make a passed pawn. And the most obvious one is this guy. I can try to make a passed pawn. So I've seen people make the mistake, like say I do this. What should white do?
C4.
Why not A4?
That's a good idea.
You could do that too.
No, you can't.
Okay.
And now if you push this pawn, we take. And granted, then you could try to make a passed pawn, but you will have just made me a passed pawn, right? So yeah, now you could push this and say I got a pawn majority, 2 again, but you just made a passed pawn. Right. So Murph had it right, but like I said, you need to know why why this one is not right. He doesn't take, because if he takes, you're right. I got to pass pawn. I'm a happy camper. But always expect that black will not do the wrong move. Black is going to do whatever's the best move. And in this case, we're going to stop your pass pawn. So he did not become a pass pawn.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, the rule I told you was what? The candidate should go first. Candidate goes first. And now if black takes, you just take back and you have a pass pawn again. And if black says, I'm going to do the same trick, I'm just going to push, it doesn't matter. It's a pass pawn already. And if black says, I'm not going to take, I'll do something over here, we could just push. I've got a pass pawn already. The idea is to make a pass pawn. And you do it with a candidate pawn first. So this might look like the right move by black, but all it does is hopefully white pushes this pawn, right? White pushes this pawn and is going to create a pass pawn. So if it were white's move, what should he do?
You just told us C4.
Yeah, you still should do C4. That's right.
Right.
And now black can't come here. But let's say black is tricksy and he says, I'll go here.
Wow.
Bring up.
Well, the rule of thumb is to push the pass pawn.
Do what?
The rule of thumb was to push him.
Yeah, do you see a pass pawn to push?
At this
No.
moment,
Yeah, at this moment, is there a pass pawn?
No.
no.
Yes, Linear Stork. This is mostly talking about the end game. But even in the middle game, you want to push past pawns with protection because it still creates the same pressures. I've seen games in the middle game where that pass pawn gets so deep that black is just scrambling, or whoever it is, white or black, is scrambling to try to stop that pawn and stop all the... Because pawns down here on the 7th and the 6th are scary for the other team. So even if it's not a pass pawn, I want a pawn down here in the middle game. This is a great square for a pawn in the middle game for white. But anyway, so black is trying. Black goes here. What do you do as white?
A3.
What?
A3.
A3, yes. We can't push this one yet. He just takes.
Right.
Free pawn, and then I can't push this one. So we can't push that one. But I can push this one. Why? Because I'm planning to push this one. And then if he takes, I take back. If he doesn't take, I don't care. Because once he doesn't take back, I can just push again. Now, can I push here right away like Keith was saying? Keith said, push the pass pawn. I heard him. Can I push that, Keith?
I changed my mind.
Well, it's not a pass pawn, but can you push it?
You could.
Is there something black can do to hurt you by pushing it?
Yeah, he could. He actually. Not taking the king. Well, if he moves up, I get him. I eat him, and I'm
Yeah.
a pass pawn for sure.
Right.
So he's just blocking me from moving at this moment.
Yep.
Pushing again.
Yep. So what do you do now as white?
You're going to move the pawn to A4.
A4?
Yeah, and when you lock him in there.
Okay, then how do you ever get this to be a pass pawn? So here's a simple way to look at it. I don't need to lock this pawn anywhere. I'm the aggressor. I need to push this pawn. I need support to push this pawn. I need a pawn here so I can push this pawn here. Do you agree? I need a pawn here so I can push this pawn here.
You gotta get rid of the A pawn.
Yes, how? Not locking him in, and then you can never get rid of him. Still A3.
B4.
Still A3, and even if he pushes, you just go B4.
Right.
You could take, because the king is so far away, you'll be able to come down here, he'd have to take, and then you can run. But this is better, cleaner probably, right? You just push past, and now next move, I get to go here, and then the next move I get to go here, and black can't stop that. And if black were to go here, what would you do?
Pass them.
You could just pass by, right? Now, you could take, and like I said, because the king is so far away, but yeah, you could just pass him. We're talking like, say, maybe the kings aren't far away, because then the next move I get to go here, and then I get to make a pass pawn. So that's how important pass pawns are. We want to do everything we can to make a pass pawn. And black is trying to do everything he can to stop you. So if this pawn were here, black's move would be here. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so let's say white were to go here. What should black do?
Take.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it's a pass pawn for black then.
Nope, you don't take.
You said black.
No, you
Huh?
said black had to move it.
You said
It was
black.
black's
move.
move.
I said it's black to move
Yeah, so black would take the white one and A4.
and have a pass pawn.
Right.
Okay. And of course, if we're here, would you still do it?
No, because there's no protection from the king.
Right. So, what would black do if I were black? I'd do nothing. I move this king somewhere maybe. Because if you take, I take back, and now what? You'll never get a pass pawn without me getting one too. But, boom, 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 boom. If I take, now white has a pass pawn. You do too, but I made it a little tougher for you. The king's over here, right? And by the way, your pass pawns are doubled pawns. And this guy's got a nice free reign, and he could even go here first and move his pawn that way if he needed to. So it depends. It's all situational. I'm just saying, though, that if black is trying to stop white, right, if that's his major ideas, I'm going to stop white so I can maybe win on the other side, then I'm saying that even at here, you don't even take. Because then you give white a pass pawn. You just leave it. If he pushes here, you don't care. If he pushes, you take, and you get the same pass pawn. And your pass pawn is all the way over here now. And if he takes, you just take back, and you still get to stop him. Stop him. Does that all make sense? Alrighty, righty. So I think we covered...
Can you go back to the original setup for this? Because I have a question for you. The 3-2 on one side versus the... Yeah. Okay. We've talked about this. So white has the opportunity to have a pass pawn, as we've discussed. Black doesn't because of the double pawns.
Correct.
So if it's black to move, should the king get over to the side that he needs to help the two pawns?
Yes. So the other thing to think about is that the king always should become active. I've seen way too many endgames. I think I saw one with Busy. Busy was playing an endgame. He's one of my friends on stream that he's a strong player, and he loves endgames as much as I do. At least, I don't know if anybody could, but I think he does. And I watched Busy play an endgame in our qualifier tournament, and he did not activate his king, in my opinion, nearly soon enough. So yes, your king needs to get over here and fight. Now, he doesn't have to go too far, right? This column, he acts like a pawn against this potential passer. So you can keep an eye over here while trying to limit these guys.
Keep him in the middle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kings, in the endgame, my king wants to be in the middle. Make it most active. So he can help watch this side as well as watch this side.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, black is losing because white has the potential pass pawn and black has double pawns. So black is losing. So first thing is you have to understand that black is going to be playing first thought for black is stop white from winning. So, black might be happy with a draw. Okay, because he's losing materially.
Because there's no clear opportunity for black to get a pass pawn.
Oh yeah, there's not. And he has double pawns, and white has a pawn majority against him. And if he can get his king, let's say he went over here thinking I could do some stuff, this king can get here because he doesn't have pawns to keep him out. This king can't get close. And this is something else I've seen my beginners do. This king can't even get there by itself. This king can. Right? So white's king can win both of these pawns. Black's king can't even get to any of these pawns because none of them have moved yet. So he'd have to break through with a pawn first, which is not always easy, right? Let's say you even come all the way here. Let's say he takes. King still can't get in, right? Still can't get in. So how many pawns do you want to give away? You still can't get in. And if you took that pawn all the way down here and you put it here and you said, ha ha, right? I'm going to, you're in trouble. Let's say it's even protected. Ha ha. You say, you're in trouble. I'm getting in. Well, not really. Look, the king still can't get in. Now you can push this guy until he takes and then you can get a queen. But think about how long all that takes. Now, of course, if white were to have taken back, now you have double pawns that he can eat too. But the point is that the king needs to be active. The king needs to get out there and help you. But you need to also know, are you playing to win or draw at which point? And at this point, white is actually winning because he has the potential. Doesn't mean it's a one game. It should be a drawn game if played right, probably. All right? Mm-hmm. All right. So that's a lot about pawns, guys. A lot about pawns. So I owe you some axioms or some sayings to make things easier for you to remember. And then we're going to go play some pawns versus a piece. We're going to see how you do with pawns versus pieces. But first thing is, Can we
touch one more thing?
Of course.
You touched on this already, and it's worth talking about. The 3 pawns together keep out the king.
Oh yeah. This black king can't get to any of these. It can't take any of these pawns. While white's king can get here to take off that pawn. There's a route, right? This king can go to get there. He can go that way. He can come this way. Only these 2 white squares are illegal. So he can get to your pawns. He can also get behind these pawns.
Together, they can still block him a little bit, but not as much as the 3.
Right. Here it's better because now he can't get in, right? Well, he can, right. But he can't get here. He can't get here. He can't go there or there, but he can go here. So now the king can't do it on his own. Now the king can't get to you, right? Because all these squares are taken. But, of course, we still have the pawn to break open and get me in. You, unfortunately, don't have this candidate pawn to break anything open, right? I mean, you just get blocked. And you could just get blocked. And so you need to try to work this pawn and then work this pawn ahead of it. And again, you can. It's going to take you so much more work. And even if you take here, you can't. Look, black's king still can't get in. Black's king still cannot get in, while white's king can. Right? All right? Okay. All right, so let's go back to, I owe you some axioms. So first one is, what do we do with a passed pawn? We push it. Push passed pawns. And if your opponent has a passed pawn against you, stop the passed pawn. All right? Stop the passed pawn. In the end game, activate your king. Your king is a powerful piece. We've played games with just pawns and kings, remember? We've done this game before already. And we did it the first day, where it's just kings and pawns. And to win this game, the simple idea is to get your king to be more active, because your king can take pawns, right? If you just make your pawns do all the work on their own, the king is going to go eat up pawns. So activate your king in the endgame. Find and use the pawn majority. If you don't have one, try to create one. If you can create an imbalance where you have more pawns on one side than they do, and their king is stuck on the side where they have the majority of their pawns and you're over there defending, and you can let the pawns do their own work, you do that. So again, if I have a pawn majority over here, so these pawns are over here, and you only have 2 over there, and you have a pawn majority over, you still have a pawn majority, right? You can create stuff too. That's fine. If his king is over here and I'm over here defending, these pawns can do it all by themselves and create a passed pawn. So you look for imbalances and try to make sure that your king is in the right timing to get to where it needs to go. Candidate for passed pawns, ones that look like they're almost a passed pawn, they move first. If you move this guy first, you just got blocked out, right? Let's even get rid of him. So now we both have candidate pawns, right? We both have a candidate pawn. Candidate, candidate. So if I know what I'm doing, I'm going to push my candidate first. He should push his candidate first. And then we get locked up and the game will stop. But if he makes the mistake of maybe pushing this guy first, I get to push up here. You get to go here. I could go here. Especially depending on, can I reach? Can I get there in time? I could take. You could take back. And if I can get there in time and you can't, it still works out for me. All right. But we were also just talking about the theory where this guy was, you had a majority. And I'm just saying candidates go first. But then they need help. Don't just keep going until they get taken off. All right. Activate your king, push past pawns, stop past pawns. If you are ahead in material, all right? So let's say, for an example, this is white and black has only 1 bishop. White wants to trade off this bishop for his bishop or his knight. Because if he could trade off the bishop for the knight or the bishop, then white has the only piece. He has the only minor piece. And black would have no pieces, just the king. So when you're ahead in material, and this could be at the very opening of the game, if your opponent blunders away a bishop or a knight or rook, if you trade off all the pieces, you're going to have 1 more piece than they will. So in general rule, these are general axioms. Axioms are general ideas. When you're ahead in material, trade off pieces. Now let's take that a step further. And let's not make these pawns that ugly. All right, so who's ahead in material? Who's ahead in material, guys?
White.
White, by how much?
2 pawns.
2 pawns.
2 pawns. So white's ahead 2 pawns. So if you believe in the axiom, white should try to trade off the pieces. There's only 2 bishops. White should try to trade off the bishops. But I've seen things like this situation where black will play here. And I'm like, what? Because you just now made white's 2 pawns that much stronger. Because now I have 2 pawns, more than you. I'm going to try to make a pass pawn and win the game. And what are you going to be doing? Losing. So you can't
So
trade.
White has 2 potential pass pawns, right?
Yes, this one and this one.
Mm-hmm.
So black, for a chance to draw. Again, we're playing for draw because we're down material, guys. For black to have a chance to draw this game, he can't trade off the pieces. He needs to either trade off pawns or take pawns. So let's say he traded off all these pawns. Now, black only needs to stop 2 pawns. Much easier job in a sense than if you had more pawns on the board. So I need to get rid of pawns if I'm behind on material. Now, it would have been great if I also got to get rid of that one because now it's a draw. All right, this is an easy draw. This still makes it tough, but this is an easy draw. So while I'm trying to trade off pawns, I'm trying to win 1 back, right? If I can get a pawn. And where this comes in really to play is, let's say I traded off all the pawns and you still have more pieces than me. It's a draw. You could checkmate if I didn't have a bishop. But with the bishop, this is a draw. So it doesn't matter that you have more pieces. And let's get rid of the bishops. And you know this is a draw. So think about it. we say when you're ahead in material, trade off the pieces, not pawns. When you're behind in material, trade off the pawns, not pieces, to the point that you could actually sacrifice a piece to get rid of the pawns. And we've given you guys the quiz before. Which one would you rather be, white or black?
White.
White. Which one would you rather be, white or black?
White.
Which one would you rather be, white or black?
Black.
White.
Why would you want to be black now, Janet?
I thought the king would block the pawn from queening.
And if it does, why would you want to be black?
To draw.
Oh, but white, if black makes a mistake, white wins, right?
Right.
So if this is what black looks like, white might win, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, let's say we're like this. White might win.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I ever want to be black?
White.
Yeah, the only one that has a chance to win is the one with the pawn. So think about it. If we're at some point in the game and there might be a few more pieces on the board, but if I can even sack my bishop for these two pawns and I lose my bishop, but now you don't have enough material to mate me, I get my draw. So this is where understanding if you're winning or losing, if you're playing for a draw or for a win, matters. We don't always play for a win. A draw is sometimes a great outcome when you're behind. You made mistakes early, you gave away material, your opponent had a great tactic, something you didn't even expect, they snuck you one, man, they hit you hard and you didn't even know it was coming. You might be very happy with a draw. And you got to know when you have to know when your best outcome is the draw, because if you know that, you could play towards making that happen, and your opponent who really wants to win might overpress and try too hard and give you back stuff. Thanks, Bolt. All right.
You showed before that, and we know that with a minor piece on the board, you can't. It's a draw. But you showed a minor piece versus two minor pieces is also a draw.
Sure, why not? How you gonna force a checkmate like this? Let's say they're the same color bishop. How are you gonna force a checkmate? Because the concept, and two bishops, we're going to talk about this later. We're not doing it right now. The concept for checkmating, right, is can I trap you here, like say like this, right? And it's not easy to do because right now it's a stalemate, right?
Yeah.
So I need to be able to get it so that, I'm chasing you somehow so that when you get here, I can throw in this checkmate. Again, not easy to do. So, but you need to make that happen. And so maybe it's where, you're allowing him here. And then you take that away. And so now, look, he only has this square. So he goes there. And you say, okay, you could go there again. And so, and I don't even remember all the ways how to do it. But I need to get to the point where I can throw in the checkmate. I don't remember. But the point is, throwing another bishop into this mix, how are you ever going to do it? Right? I could just go sit over here. Your king won't.
Two minor pieces as long as the opponent doesn't have a piece.
Right. When we talk about, when we say two bishops can mate, we're saying everything else is gone.
Okay.
Everything else is traded. The same reason why we say this is a draw. This is a draw. Black needs to have a pawn on the board. Now, he could have another piece, but the safest, best way is a pawn. If he had another piece, he could probably stop you from mating him also. But a pawn can't stop you from getting over here and doing what you want to do. But the point is, you're going to get to the point where this king would be, right? Like right now, this king can't move, right? So if it's black to move and he has no pawn, this is stalemate. But if he has a pawn, he can move the pawn and then you could say checkmate. So I can force him into the corner so I can get my checkmate. But I can't force him into the corner because the way it happens is you're going to check at some point, right? And I don't even, let's say you're here, you check him here, I don't even know. But you get him over here, and now he's got to stay there, and so he needs to be able to move a pawn so that you could take your knight and maneuver your knight into a square to say checkmate. And that's going to take time. And if he doesn't have a pawn, that time that it takes you to maneuver for checkmate, it's a stalemate. So yeah, you need a pawn. But if I didn't have a pawn and I had a bishop, now of course if I just put my bishop over here and do nothing, or just keep moving him here and here, it works like the pawn does, right? You'd win. But who's going to do that? Then no one's going to do that. They're going to get this bishop to a point where they can come over here and chase your king, chase your knight, and just, keep you from getting this situation. So yeah, when we say that you can mate with these, we mean all by itself. But
I know that.
But this too, when we said you can mate with a queen alone, we don't mean like in this situation, right? We mean when we say you can mate with a queen alone, we mean this. Nothing else is there. You can mate with a rook alone. We mean there's nothing else there. It's just assumed that when we say that you can mate with this material, you have mateable material. You have mateable material because these two alone can mate this guy. Now you could have a knight. I can have two knights, and I could still, in theory, checkmate you because you messed up, right? You allowed me to get the situation where I can mate you. Like say maybe I could get into this situation and it's still checkmate, but it's not forced, right? Black has a say. Black can make it a draw. Black can play properly and not allow you to checkmate him. And that's the same thing if you have a bishop. I can keep you from checkmating me if I play properly. If I have a queen or a rook. But like this, white can't stop me from checkmating you.
So it can be done, it just can't be forced. I got you.
Yeah. So when we say, because you take situations like this, and you say, okay, can a rook? Well, we know a rook can checkmate you by itself. Oh, let's just do this. Can white checkmate black? Well, yeah. If I can get here.
Smothered.
But when we talk about do you have material to mate, if I only have a knight, the answer is no, you don't have enough material to mate. Doesn't mean that there won't happen a situation where you can do it. It means that if we get rid of everything else, that I can go to the person running the tournament and say it's a draw. Or in your guy's case, Lichess will tell you this is a draw.
So do you have to play it out?
No, Lichess won't even let you. Because it's impossible for you to checkmate black.
Really? It won't let you
No, you can't checkmate black this way.
I just didn't know that Lee chess would automatically ring you up as a draw.
Yeah, this will be a draw automatically, and this will be a draw, and it'll say due to insufficient material.
Oh, I've never gotten that one before.
Yeah, I didn't think. I understand that. That I don't expect when you guys first start that you have that situation. But if you had a pawn and I had a bishop and it's my move as black, let's even make it better. It's my move as, well, where'd my bishop go? I can move as black. I'm not going to take your bishop, give you a pawn, and let you get a queen and win. I'm going to take the pawn, and then this is a draw. If I don't take the pawn, and you can block my pawn, right? Black had, it was a white pawn. All right, so if I can do this, like protect it, and you go, because if you take now, my king takes, and then the pawn queens. So you say, okay, I got to get out of the way. I can say, no, you can't. And I go, okay, I got to get out of the way. And I start pushing the pawn. You say, I'm going to come in here. And I go, okay. So I know what I got to do is I got to get this bishop between you and this square, right? So, I mean, I can come over here, and you could say, okay, or maybe you move your king. Now I attack your bishop, and then you move away. I attack your bishop because I need to get you off of that square. So now you go here or something, and I can go, okay, can I get there, right? You're not going to let me. Your job is not to let me. Right? Because this doesn't work. You just take. Right. So this is automatically draw. And LeChess, chess.com, any good program will tell you insufficient material and won't let you keep playing. The same way, this is insufficient material and it'll end the game in a draw. This is not insufficient material. Play on, because you can make that a rook or a queen. But if you get it down to the other end and make it into a knight, it's going to say draw, insufficient material. All right, so if you're ahead in material, what do you do?
Trade.
Trade.
Trade what?
Pieces.
Pieces. How about pawns?
That's all you have to-
No, keep them on the board. Keep your pawns on the board. Keep as many pawns as you can. Get rid of the pieces. And if you're down material, what are you trying to do?
You want to eat pawns.
Get rid of as many pawns as you can. And in the end, you might even sacrifice a piece to get a couple more pawns. Because if you can get rid of all the pawns, then you don't have to worry about the fact they're up one minor piece. Or even a major piece. If you have 2 rooks and they have 1 rook, then you can run around and try to avoid trading off the rooks so that they could win even. But if they have a rook and a bishop, let's say, against your rook, you're golden. Because if you ever trade off the 2 rooks, it's a draw. All right, we're good? All right, so now what we want to do is, and we don't really have a lot of time. Well, we have 13 minutes, so we could do at least 1 or 2. We want to take you into our study. And let me go find my study for you guys. Now let's go by date recently updated. And so we're in here. And we've done a lot of these, guys. You've done really well. But what we want to do is work with, actually, like right here. Now that one's too easy. We've done it. We've done that one. We've done that one. Okay, we've talked about that one. I hope you guys remember. Castling, we're not talking about. Where is my... I just saw it. I know I just saw it. What happened? I could have sworn I saw it. Not which side would you rather be? Yeah. So like this one. Right? Which side would you rather be? And we said that we'd rather be white, right?
Yes.
But can you bring home the win?
If you use your king to protect your pawns, maybe.
Well, let's see if we can create a little tournament. We'll definitely make it unrated. Right? We definitely want this to be unrated. And maybe we should, well, let me think for a second. Maybe we should do a little, let me see if I can find a better one. I want one with a minor piece against pawns, but that one is going to be really hard for the side with the pawns because they are so far separated. All right, so let's, you know what, we'll make one. We'll make a position up. We'll have 2 pawns. And we're going to make it a little tougher. We'll make it 3 pawns. Okay. So we'll start with this as our position. You're going to have white sometimes, you're going to have black sometimes. We'll play a little quick tournament, just for the purpose of teaching. We'll put it in the, let me invite you, because you guys are going to be doing it. So just for the class. You guys might want to do it too, but I don't want you, they might feel a little intimidated by you guys playing them. So instead of you guys playing them, we're going to create a tournament just for them. And we can all watch. Huh? You're not intimidated. No, you're a tough dude.
No, I'm not. I'm a lover.
All right, we're going to make it a 5-minute. We're just going to make it 5 minutes, and it's only going to last for, since I only have 10 minutes, we're going to make it last for 20 minutes. See if it'll allow me to do 5 minutes with a 10-minute description. Starting position, let me paste that in. It'll be in your class tournament. So it's in the class. You guys all belong to the class, so you should be able to do it. Let's see if it'll let me do it and do it in like 1 minute. And I'll give you the, no, I got to increase the duration. I'm just hoping I don't have to increase it too much. All right. So let me give you the link, and you can click on this. I'll put it in the chat window. Hopefully I'll get it there in time. There you go. Click on that and join the tournament. And depending if there's even number of you, I will not play. If there's odd, I'll play. And it is unrated, casual, excellent. That's right, Linear. They will be. That's great, Chess Wizard. Then I did a really good job. I just made it up on the fly. If it's an exactly equal position to start with, I did a great job. Yeah, we didn't, you know, we could have, 10 seconds. Irv, are you playing?
7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
Irv, are you playing? You didn't join.
1.
No, I wasn't so okay. I'll have to join quick. Sorry.
Yeah, you're going to miss the beginning. All right, so I get to be white. Whoa.
Like white moves first, right?
Yes, I'm playing against Murph. I'll show that game versus other games. Let's see. Yep, we should be good. Let me just check my screen.
Hey, I'm playing you, Janet.
All right.
Yep.
Maybe we should show you playing Janet. I don't know. Like I said, this would be great if it's a draw, because that means I did a good job of making it up. I have no idea. And how is it a draw? I don't know. Linear? I don't know. We haven't figured it all out. Ah, see? Chess Wizard. I'm awesome. Chess Wizard said the engine, he loves looking at that engine, said it's a draw.
It's almost like you're baiting me to do this, but okay.
No, I just made a mistake. That was just a
okay.
blunder. That was just a blunder. I would love to take it back, but you can't do that in chess. Yeah, so this is, now I agree. This is going to be a draw for sure. I have no way to force it. And go ahead and take, and that way we'll show everybody that it says insufficient material automatically gave a draw. I don't have to take your knight. All right, back to the tournament. I'll pause out because Irv's here now, and we'll get other games. And we can go look at Keith Love's game. Keith and Janet. And Keith, you have white. So Janet's already got back one of those pawns.
She sure did.
Yeah, Linear, and we just played it, and I blundered, and it was a draw. I don't think I could force a win, but I should have made it a lot tougher. What you gonna do, Janet? What you gonna do?
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, not easy. All right, let's see if Irv got a game yet. Nope. Irv, you should get a game with Lemurf soon.
Yep. I'm ready.
We're gonna go. Our lesson's gonna go a little over instead of an hour and a half because you guys are playing this tournament. But I think it's you need to get a chance to play with the pieces. And now I can talk to Chad a little bit while you guys play. Let me know if you get your game started though, Irv, and I'll put it up on the screen.
Okay. Irv, did you come back from the tournament?
I think so.
Yeah, you should have. Did you hit back to tournament?
I'm in. I'll come out and come back in.
Yeah, my lips are getting dry. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. That's where I'd like you to use the chess wizard, not overly use it for figuring things out. I'd much prefer you use it as a fact checker. Just as a checker to make sure you thought the right way and you figured it out. First of all, it's not always right, but it's definitely not always right and from a human standpoint. Even Samuel, who gave me a lesson on Sunday, was saying that, you know, the computer sometimes doesn't give you a human move. And if it's not giving you human moves, you got to move on. You got to find a new way. So the problem with this, Janet, is your king is behind the pawns instead of in front of the pawns.
Yeah, I know.
So you were aggressive, but it's going to cost you.
Right. So I gotta give up a piece here.
Yeah. But you still have chances, but I don't know if you can make it. Yeah, I think you might be able to make it. Go for it. Yeah. Go for it. Now the critical move is next, Janet.
Okay.
Now you got 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 14 seconds. There you go. You had to find the right square. Very good. So you still get there. So Keith should have waited and pushed that other pawn first. He pushed the wrong pawn. And that's the beauty, right? Even though you had made a mistake, Janet, your king was behind the pawns, Keith moved the wrong pawn, allowing you to still draw.
Mm-hmm.
I love principles linear.
Great job, Janet.
All right, another draw. We should see a lot of draws, guys. That's actually the intent, right?
Yeah.
These should be draws all over the place.
15.
Yeah, that was really good.
So Murph,
So instead of pushing to get the queen, Keith should have moved the G pawn.
yep, and then the bishop would have had to take, and then he could push the other pawn, and she wouldn't have been able to come back in time because it was on the 7th rank.
Right.
Hey Noah, how are you, my friend?
That's 100% right, Murph.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I'm wondering why it's not giving you more games. Come on, where's the games? Let's go.
It says stand by.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it's just taking its
Stand by.
sweet time.
Pairing
And
players.
Murph, it didn't give you and me a point.
Okay. Let's see.
I have no idea why it didn't give us a point, Murph.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We don't really care. It's just for training purposes. So, yeah. But I thought it might be that we didn't play enough moves.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, you have to play usually a minimum amount of moves.
Oh, come on. Oh, good. Gosh. All right, I'll just move. I got 6 seconds. 6 seconds.
All right. So Keith has black against Murph.
Oh, that was a finger fault, for Pete's sake.
Using your fingers to move the pieces, huh? It's a good move, though,
Oh.
but not the one you intended.
No.
Understood. Hey guys, I had an order for Kaiser's Revenge, my card game, and unfortunately it went to my spam, and the lady called me a week later and said, hey, this was supposed to be here in 4 days. We still don't have it. It was a gift from my son to his father. You know, you took my money. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I looked it up, and sure enough, it was in my spam folder. I felt so bad. Luckily got it out right away. Got it to them before Christmas, and they were playing it on Christmas Day. So I was very happy. But I was very upset at first because I almost blew it.
Getting one, I think.
Yeah, we might have time after this. If not, definitely Friday. Friday at 11. I'm not. We don't have any. We're not doing the qualifiers, so I could definitely do on Friday as worst case scenario. Whoa! What was that?
That was
Keith.
a bad move on my
No,
part.
Keith. Keith's game. I don't know what Keith is doing.
I was just eating pawns, but yeah.
You gave away your
Not gonna
bishop
be-
for free, and now you lose the game.
Yeah, I can't do anything now. Oh, Murph.
Oh, that's true. That's true, Wizard. We do.
You saw that pawn.
We do have channel
Yeah.
points.
I was trying. Yeah. I didn't think that one through.
Oh, yeah. You guys are too fast. You both redeemed 10,000 points. So now I got to do 2 games because you both redeemed it. Chess Wizard was trying to treat you. But you can still pay for 2 more. I try not to make them so expensive that you couldn't use them up, guys. My chat is redeeming channel points so that I can review games. All right, so looks like Janet had a chance to possibly win her game with Irv, but she's not following the rules. And and this one Murph's got a queen, so yeah, expect this one to end in a win. So again, like Linear said, although it's a draw on the books, right, per the computer, doesn't mean it's going to be an actual draw, guys.
What you wanted to do.
You got to
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
You did. You did.
but I didn't do that
You,
on
maybe
purpose.
you saw. Well, as soon as you said to me, I'm getting a pawn. I was like, please do.
Oh, Patrick, do I have you down for Friday? My bad.
Please do.
I need to put it in my calendar to make sure I don't
Thank you very much.
flub it.
Exactly.
It's not my calendar. I never remember anything. So let me put it in my calendar. Oh, let me check. It might already be on my calendar, knowing me. Is Friday what I told you for your lesson? Then it's me, just not remembering. Okay, good. I believe you. Like I said, I didn't remember, and that's why I have to put it in, because if I don't remember,
So,
I'm putting on my calendar right now, so I will remember.
so where did I mess up?
I don't know. You? Oh, to win? Come on, you got into the non-magic position.
Right,
Yeah.
but
Is that the muddle?
okay. I guess.
Yeah, she was in the
I'll put it
muggle
later.
position and wondering why she didn't win it. Because you're in the muggle position. You can't win in the muggle position. You have to be in the magic position.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Do
Okay.
we have any other games going? Yes. Irv and Keith. So we actually had a win somehow. Shouldn't have been a win, but we had a win. All right.
That was me.
Yeah, I know.
You beat me.
I know. You found a way to lose.
I want that pawn.
Careful what you wish for, right?
Exactly.
You got it, but yeah, it was probably not the one you shouldn't have been taking it.
So Irv is white now, right? So Irv is going to show us how to do it.
I don't know about that. I'll
It's
certainly try.
it's more of a question of will Irv can't force a win. All right? So Murph or Keith should be able to force a draw.
Oh, I can't
but-
watch it anymore.
But if he doesn't do it
All
right,
right, Janet, me and you.
All right, go for it, Murph.
no, we got another match. All right. Chess Kudo, we don't allow you that power. Oh, that's pretty bad. Yeah, I'll put on my. I'll have to switch to my Potteresque glasses. Oh, you guys having fun. Hey, thanks, Chess Wizard, for using my laughing person. I appreciate that. I think she's prettier than the other one. She's a nice lady, too. I don't know if he was a nice guy. I think he was a comedian, if I remember correctly. Well, Keith is putting up a good fight this time. Let's see how Murph's doing with Janet. Janet took the opposition. Where will she go? Where will she go? Maybe she won't get behind the pawns this time.
Oh, I see. I have to move it. Okay.
And luckily, you guys don't have unlimited time, so. Yes, 3 letters is faster. Yeah, you'd have to. It's unfair because you got to type. I think if you could type it, you'd have to type out that whole name, right? Don't you? It's crazy.
Is that the weak position?
No, that's getting again getting past. You're again getting too far
Behind?
Yeah, you don't need. You can wait.
Okay.
Patience is a virtue, and you definitely don't want to give away your bishop, right?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I do not. So I'll move him here.
Okay. Yeah, I know, but they make you use like a long name. It would be really good. It'd be good if I could do like a number or something, or you just can't. Yep, that's where I start. That's where I just use my if you notice, I did new icons to go with the items, little images I found, and they should have. Let me see. So there was supposed to be a way that you can now use. I had 2 more sound effects. I think I had to go to my stream to use them though. I don't know where I find them. I gotta find out how I can. Nope. I gotta find out how I can make that sound, those sounds. So I found 2 more sounds, but I just don't know how to play them now. Okay, linear. I'm not as pessimistic. I don't know what the word would be. I like to be more optimistic or positive thinking. I think they'll get something done right eventually. So hopefully you guys find this educational, playing these out.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody have sirens in the background?
No, concentration.
Uh-oh. Now this is a loss. Murph wins again. Murph wins again.
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna go sit on the couch.
Yeah, that's fair. I've not had to deal with them yet, so yeah, I get frustrated about poor support because that's part of what I do for a living. Part of what I do is provide support for different software that we have. So yeah, I have no patience for bad support. Oh, okay. You're gonna be like what was her name? What was her name? Curly. Crybaby Carly. Yeah, she had all those different lights and stuff going on. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Understood. Can Keith stop him?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can't lose that bishop.
Well, I guess that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Because there's an extra piece, that's why. I have an extra pawn.
Yeah. I guess I didn't know how to get out of the little dance we were playing.
Oh yeah, that's where you got in trouble.
I didn't want. Isn't there like
Ah.
if they move so many times that it becomes a stalemate? But I guess
Yeah.
a stalemate's better than a lose, right?
It's not number of moves to be a stalemate. You if you at any point in the game have 50 consecutive moves, that's 25 apiece. 50 consecutive moves without a pawn being taken or a pawn moving or a piece being taken. So I shouldn't have said a pawn being taken. If you have 50 moves in a row without a pawn moving or a piece being taken, it's a draw. And black timed out.
Right?
Black timed out,
25 each.
so white wins this game because he has material to win. What'd you say, Murph?
I thought I had it, man. I thought I was going to get it.
3-move repetition is different. 3-move repetition is any time in a game that the exact same position is on the board 3 times.
That's what I think she was trying for.
No, she was saying that if how many moves would it take before you are stalemate, which would make me think of how many moves can I play before it says, you took too long to checkmate me. That's not 3-move repetition. That's the 15-move rule.
I kept moving my bishop out of the way,
Right.
and I guess I should have just kept doing that, right?
Throw that game up.
Maybe.
Marty, can you?
Yeah. Let me. So that was Janet and you. Janet, you have a game with Irv though. You might want to go play that.
I'm playing with Keith right now.
Oh, sorry, Keith, not Irv. All right. Let me just go back. So that was Janet and you, Murph.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. So let's see how it went. So far, so good. I agree with Chess Wizard in general, though. Probably the best way to go is for the king to come towards this pawn and let the bishop try to hold both of these pawns on its own. Feels like it's a better way. But even here, Janet, so he chased your bishop. So one thing Janet, you're busy. So, but Janet could have just say went here. That keeps the pawn from pushing. And you could push this one when you're ready because I'm going to take this one. So I'm guessing you probably would have come back to here. I don't know what I would do here. Maybe here. Then you get to go here. And see, I still don't like this. I don't like the king here because this pawn is going to get the push.
Exactly. Well, the concept is once the king is behind the pawn, it can never catch it.
In general, that's right. But I still have a bishop if I didn't lose it. So I think if the king just comes towards here, then white kind of has to come and protect it, right? And white gets tied down here. And then this bishop, what can you do? If you push this pawn, you lose this pawn. If you push this pawn, you lose this pawn. And if you move your king over, I get this pawn. And once I get this pawn, now you got to try to make hay with both of these guys. And I'm gonna run my king back to here, and once my king is in front of those pawns plus the bishop, I shouldn't have a problem. So you could try to stop me from getting there, right? That would be an idea, but you can't go too far because once you lose that pawn, game's over too. You need both pawns. So as long as I'm hitting that pawn, you can't leave that pawn.
Can I come look now?
Yeah,
All right, hold on, let me.
I'm sharing my screen, so just go to Zoom.
All right, go ahead.
So I was just saying, though, that I thought that if you had went for this pawn, Murph would probably have to protect. And if he doesn't protect the pawn and he does something like this, you take the pawn. And then, he could push this one now. And then he can't go here, right?
Right.
And so what does he do? Let's say he does that. You're just going to run your king over here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get your king out in front of him, it doesn't matter that he has both pawns anymore because you still have a bishop. You can also come here and pin the pawn. King could take the opposition. You could go, okay. And he could push, you could go okay, you could say check, you can go okay, and then what does he do? If he goes here, you just take.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
I think the way to get the draw is to go. The king
Go
needs to
after
attack the lone pawn
Isolated.
and let the bishop try to hold the 2 pawns.
Mhm.
That seemed to be the best tactic.
Mhm.
All right. No more games, I take it, and it's running
Very
out of
good.
time. But Murph did get 2 wins. Irv got a win.
Congratulations.
There
Murph.
should have
You're a
been
good
no
student.
wins. There should have been no wins. Should have been all draws. But next time, so next week we will do pawns against the knight. I'll find
I
some
like these
equal positions.
exercises. These are good.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
We'll finish it
I think
off with
it's awesome.
pawns versus knights, pawns versus bishop, pawns versus rooks, pawns versus queens. We're gonna do all of those, and then we'll start letting you get close to playing a full game.
Okay.
The most meaningless tournament I've ever had. Yeah, because none of this mattered. We don't care. Totally don't care.
It's good for your resume, Murph.
We might have time to do it next Wednesday.
Just to show you
Chess
how
Kudo.
meaningless it is, Tiberian's at the bottom.
Yeah, I came in last with 0 points.
Okay? That should tell you something right there.
Our draw was too quick. That's what it tells me. I didn't even get 1 point for the draw.
We got cheated out of a point. But okay.
Hey, it's not rated.
Hey, Keith, you and I are tied.
Yeah, babe, we're good. But I think you did much better. But I really like this class a lot because this is the type of things I like to think about. You know, when I'm playing. You know,
Excellent.
yeah, really good class.
I took some notes, and I really want to make sure I understand the difference between a weak space and a weak pawn.
Mm-hmm. And you can. The nice thing is you can go back and watch this video.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Can you put that out there somewhere?
Well,
The
it'll
video
be.
link?
I'll be putting it on like I do every week. It'll be on YouTube, and you could also go to twitch.tv/Tiberian. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
You can also go to that, and it'll stay there for. It'll be there for how long is it there for? 14
while.
days or more. Yeah, it's there for a while.
All right.
There you go. But you
Awesome.
can put that into your browser, and
Okay.
you can look at it on your phone, by the way. And you
Okay.
can go watch what I'm doing right now. But you can also, after tonight, it'll be right afterwards. You can go watch the VOD, and you can back it up. You can fast forward. You can look at different parts.
Okay.
Yep. That